Welcome to the latest Evershed Sutherland Legal Insights podcast.
Hello, I'm Matthew Allen, Global Head of Financial Services at Evershed Sutherland. Welcome to the latest in a series of podcasts exploring trends and opportunities in global financial markets during 2025. In this series, we'll be hearing from our clients and industry observers on hot topic issues, which our own subject matter experts on both sides of the Atlantic will then reflect on in a sister podcast. Today, we'll be looking at the issue of digitalization of financial services, and in particular, what feels like the inexorable rise in digital banking. To help us do this, I'm delighted to be joined by Carl Hollingsworth, who is Chief Legal and Corporate Governance Officer at Mox Bank in Hong Kong. Carl, thanks very much indeed for joining us today. It's great to have you with us. Maybe you could start by introducing yourself to the listeners, telling them a little bit about you and your background and your roles and responsibilities at Mox, and also importantly, what Mox Bank is and what it does.
Thanks very much, Matthew. It's great to be here today, having a chat to you. One of my favourite topics, digitalisation and banking, for obvious reasons, which we'll come on to in a minute. As to me, I'm originally and remain a Tasmanian, where I return to often and hope to one day retire when I'm done with all the lawyering. I've spent my life playing music, studying and working in various cities as an external and then an internal lawyer for Standard Chartered. And I joined Mox, firstly to work on our license application, but then full-time halfway through the building of the digital bank back in 2019. I'm a corporate lawyer by trade. As I said, that's how I sort of came to be involved with Mox in the beginning. Building a bank from scratch, from a clean sheet of paper, was a novel opportunity. And of course, as a result, Mox is very dear to me. As to what Mox Bank is, it's a digital bank joint venture between Standard Chartered, Hong Kong Telecom, and Trip.com. Mox is a retail bank. We commenced public operations in September of 2020. We now have something like 670,000 customers and are rapidly growing our customers and the products available to them. We're in a constant state of build and run, as we like to put it, offering now a reasonably full suite of retail products from current accounts, a credit card, personal lending, FX, and securities trading of both Hong Kong and US securities. Our aim, if you like, is to set a global benchmark in digital banking with products and services that are safe, simple, smart, and fun. And of course, to finish your question, my role as the Chief Legal and Corporate Governance Officer is to supervise and hopefully lead the legal and corporate governance teams in our efforts to do just that, to build a bank that customers genuinely love with innovative and digital solutions to classic banking issues and customer challenges.
Thanks. And just taking a step back, I mean, there's a sort of question, why, right? Why create Mox Bank? And I'm curious also, there's an Asia dynamic here in terms of the demographic and how young people like to consume financial services or consume product more generally, I guess, within the digital environment. What are the sort of trends that you see that drove the creation of Mox and then will seed its future success?
Well, I think in terms of digital banking experience, Europe and the UK are more advanced along the progression from Asia. And in fact, we have and continue to learn a lot from the development of banks like Monzo and Revolut in the UK. And it seems to people at Standard Chartered that digitization was the way of banking. For those that don't know the Hong Kong market, there are some very large established players here, names that everyone would know, such as HSBC, Bank of China, and Standard Chartered issue the banknotes in Hong Kong, often referred to as the note issuing banks. It's been a wonderful market for those banks for a long time, but just based on global trends and the inevitable digitization of things, digital banks were coming. And the regulator back in 2000 and 18 decided to come up with a new type of banking license in Hong Kong, being then the virtual bank licenses, now digital bank licenses. And so for Standard Chartered, having a very substantial role in the market in Hong Kong, there was a choice. You could enhance your internal operations, make them more digital, and that clearly has happened for Standard Chartered, and/or you could decide to apply for, and if lucky enough, take up one of the new digital bank licenses and to set up a new digital bank external to the main bank with its own tech stack, its own culture, its people, ways of working, and so on. And so I guess that brings me to the key part of your question around trends in digitization. I think, and I think many other people think that banking will become predominantly in some areas solely digitized as we go forward from here. AI will become ubiquitous to banking operations and will become the key way that people provide customer services, and in our field, of course, legal contracting, writing, attending board meetings, and so on. And going back to what the trends we think will come out of Asia, it to a degree will be consistent with what you've seen in the UK and in Europe. In fact, one difference between the way things have developed in Hong Kong versus Europe is that in Hong Kong, all of the 8 digital banks which now exist started as banks. They were subject to all of the same regulatory requirements as mainstream banks from day one. Now, and we might come on to this later on in the discussion, but that of itself creates a challenge because there needs to be a balance between innovation and the regulatory requirements that come and necessarily come from operating a licensed bank. Whereas the large digital banks in the UK and Europe didn't start that way. They started as other types of business, which allowed them to test and learn and to build up their business before they took on the regulations that apply to financial institutions.
So let's just unpack that a little bit more. For banks such as yours, that, as you said, more of the kind of startup approach. What are the key regulatory challenges that exist? And again, I think you made this point. How do you balance that innovation, exciting ways of distribution and consumption, rapid onboarding, and all the things that people love about the digital experience with security and anti-money laundering rules and all of these different requirements that are an essential part of banking security?
I would say that the regulation of financial products is inevitable. And so we are seeing in Hong Kong the increasing regulation of any aspect of what you'd call innovative financial product that hasn't otherwise been regulated, or at least increasing regulation of it. For example, crypto exchanges, and more recently, stable coins in Hong Kong. In terms of the balance between regulatory challenges and innovation, I think it's important to plan very carefully for the innovation you're seeking. What business purpose are you seeking to achieve by virtue of new innovation and tech innovation in particular? And then making sure that what you roll out is secure by design. Now, this brings me back to a point that I made earlier about Mox, and why would you build a digital bank outside of an otherwise very successful global banking group? It's because when you start from scratch with a tech stack built from the base up, you can make sure that it is secure by design, it is scalable, and as the technology evolves, so can your bank. Digital banks are typically built on innovative technology that is scalable, such that the cost to serve the customers decreases as customers on board. We don't have physical presence. We enable people to deal with the bank via their phone, and that ultimately results in lower costs, which is, at the end of the day, in the customer's benefit as well. But I think another regulatory challenge from tech innovation and digital banking in particular is around third-party risk management. Banks that run on innovative technology or any technology to a degree, and certainly digital banks, which are typically tech stacks, taking in microservices from a number of vendors, are subject to significant third-party risk. And the regulators, as you would expect, are very conscious of that. And there are significant and increasing regulatory requirements around how you assess that risk in the beginning, how you deal with it in the contractual and other arrangements between you and the vendor, monitor it and ensure that the vendor meets very strict ICS and other requirements throughout the relationship. And of course, that's where an expert law firm such as yours comes into the picture. There are no longer, if you ask me, corporate lawyers who can do technology because they've done some. There's a significant difference and differentiator that comes from the skills of a tech lawyer, a lawyer that understands the data issues and genuinely understands the technology underlying the contract. And that's been very important for us at Mox. We've been really happy with the external advice we've received, and I think it's gone a long way to helping us maintain our security position.
And looking forward, Carl, in terms of the role of digital banks as they evolve over the next 5 years and your own journey at Mox, how do you see the market developing? Do you fulfill a particular niche, or is this, more of a wider financial inclusion component, thinking about emerging markets, and are you looking to expand beyond? Where do you see the limits? Maybe there aren't limits. Where do you see the limits for digital banking over the next 5 years, or the possibilities?
I'm not sure there are limits as such, in that the challenge, and our CISO here at Mox would say the key limit is making sure that you remain safe and secure. And that, there are various ways that you can do that. And as I said earlier, making sure that you are secure by design from the outset is one of them. What occurs to me is, and particularly if you think about a developing market, is that people in some markets are sort of skipping the computer generation in a way. They're going straight from customers that today or yesterday walked into a branch, but they all have a phone. And so banking is necessarily moving to phone banking. And I think what we'll see in digital banking is, through the use of data and innovative technology, AI, agentic AI, we'll see mass personalization of banking for customers in every market. And going to one of the points you referred to, Matthew, this serving the underbanked. That's part of the philosophy of Mox in Hong Kong. I wouldn't call Hong Kong an underbanked market in any way, but what Mox seeks to do is to provide a private bank experience to the everyday customer. And one way you can do that is by utilizing the data that's available to you to provide that personalized experience within the app for the customer. So the way I think about it is, if you imagine a room full of people that all have an iPhone or the same Samsung phone, but within their Mox banking app, there's personalization in there, which makes the experience better for the customer, something that they enjoy and, or we hope, love. Because I think one of the great things that's come about from digital banking, and I would say it was led in the UK, is this idea that people have a banking app, a banking experience that they genuinely love. And that has been what I've observed here in Hong Kong. At Mox, because it's, we have a lot of technology going around here, and the people that work in tech seem to love their kit, and we do at Mox. We have lots of T-shirts, jumpers, caps, umbrellas and the like. And it's not uncommon in Hong Kong, if you walk down the street wearing a Mox T-shirt or a Mox cap. I have actually been stopped by a customer and asked whether I work at Mox. And when I say yes, to then be told how great the experience the person is finding by using now a digital bank app. Now, that in the space of just 5 years, digital banking has gone from something in Hong Kong that the average person in the street probably didn't know much about, and I would have been one of them before I started working with Mox, through to a point where most people, I expect, in Hong Kong have got one of the 8 digital banking apps. Many people would have a number of them, and I think it is simply the way banking is going to be done in future. To use this sort of silly analogy, I was once told by a friend that she saw one of her children walk up to an old school TV and try to swipe it like an iPad because she didn't like what was on the TV. Now, to me, that's the way banking's going. The generation of millennials who are becoming banking customers, who have become banking customers now, will not go to a branch. They'll seek to do all of their banking online or digitally. And I think that will progress to even their interactions will be via channels and chats such as WeChat, WhatsApp, and the like. The idea that you'll need more people to run the bank will diminish. But having said that, going back to how do you balance the technology and the regulatory requirements, you can bring in all of the technology you like, but you need highly trained and skilled individuals, firstly, to design and compile the technology into a workable stack. But then you need to place a lot of effort and emphasis on the culture, making sure that the culture of the bank, one, is always customer centric, but again, one that's going to lead to a safe and secure experience for the customer. Because ultimately, banking is about trust. And digital banks in particular must maintain absolute trust with the customer, because the customer can't just walk into a branch to speak to someone if something were to go wrong. So hopefully that's given you some idea of my thoughts around the way banking is going.
It does, absolutely. And I'll definitely be coming to you for a Mox t-shirt based on that story. Sounds fantastic. I think most organizations would love to have a brand like that. So I guess my last question would be, we'll have a variety of our clients listening to this podcast in different parts of the financial services industry. They will be on a variety of points on their technology journey. Some of them, more advanced than others, and all of them grappling with emerging technology and AI and all of these different things, and thinking through the use cases and so on. What are your top tips, if I can call it that, or your advice for financial services firms that are, at different stages in that journey, but how they can progress and safely integrate these technologies and get the best of them and create the best customer outcomes?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind, it's a very broad statement, but similar to trying to get used to using AI, is simply to start and to test and learn. So you need to become familiar with what's out there, and to the extent possible, and it's easier for, I think, younger organizations that don't have an established way of working, but try and adopt some form of agile development technique with rapid adaptation to change. This idea that you fail or succeed quickly, I think, is really helpful when you're thinking about what can we do to adopt some innovative technology. Now, in banking, I don't ever like to think of the idea of failing, and I wouldn't. That perhaps that's an overly strong word. It's more that you test something, you observe, you improve, and you keep moving forward. And for most organizations, my advice would be to think about your legacy stack. Think about the technology that you run on today, and what could you do it in small bite-sized pieces in the beginning to upgrade it? What are your business needs? What could you and the customers really benefit from? And is there technology out there that can help you with that? And as I said, jump in and get started. But going back to another point that I made, also thinking about the appropriately skilled people that you will need with an innovation mindset to push through that barrier of using technology to enhance and strengthen your business. Once you've found the talent and skills, setting a culture of innovation with your team of talented individuals, consider what innovative tech is out there. There are all sorts of advisors now, and I think law firms are key among them. For those of you listening who are lawyers, of course, there are great law firms with advisors who can tell you about the technology that's available in legal services and otherwise. And now, sort of to get into some slightly more technical points to finish off, I would always prioritize cybersecurity, building a strong defense, which then enables you in your offense to go forward. At Mox, we've benefited right from the beginning by having a very experienced and knowledgeable CISO. He has built multiple digital banks before, and the moment he arrived, you could see the culture and, in fact, the expertise he brought with him. And Mox has benefited from that ever since, I would say. Otherwise, keep on top of the regulatory developments. There's all sorts of training out there. Eversheds provides great resources and training on technology, innovative technology, how people are using it. Leverage your data and make sure you maintain that customer-centric approach. It's about enhancing the customer experience with the technology and with the data, and not just adopting technology for the sake of it. And of course, we know that these are expensive exercises. Sometimes it's more expensive to try and enhance a legacy stack than it is to start afresh. And so the need for planning and speaking to the right experts from the outset is really paramount.
Oh, thank you so much. I could sit and chat with you all day, to be honest, on this topic, and really appreciate your insights and your candor. I think we're going to have to close it there. Thanks, as always, to the listeners for joining us, as always. If you would like to know more about Mox Bank or digitalization issues we've been discussing, I'm sure Carl and his colleagues would be delighted to hear from you. So don't hesitate to get in touch, and I'm sure we can pass on contact details if needed. Please also look out for the next podcast in this series with Evershed Sutherland Partners, reflecting on what Carl has shared with us today. That will appear on all our usual social media channels in the very near future. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Evershed Sutherland Legal Insights podcast.